A bill to get tougher on people who torture animals in Iowa might be losing momentum, and Illinois might get tougher on insurance companies that try to raise prices. We'll get to that this morning with former Rock Island County Republican Party Chair Bill Bloom and Democratic political consultant Kevin Perkins. Great to see you both. We will start in Illinois and new regulations proposed for companies that provide car and homeowners insurance. It's Senate Bill 1486. Here's what it would do. It would give the Illinois Department of Insurance the authority to reject rate increases from insurance companies it determines are unfair or excessive. Companies would have to give 60 days notice about raising premiums by more than 10%. They would also have to base their reasons for increasing rates using data specific to Illinois and not national data. This passed the State House of Representatives and is pending in the state Senate. Insurance companies obviously oppose it, claiming companies would leave the state. It would reduce competition and increase overall costs. That's their case. People watching at home probably like the idea. What concerns are there with this proposal, if any? Kevin Perkins.
Well, the whole idea behind the Department of Insurance, it's been around forever, but it's to protect the consumers. That's their, primary and main mission. So I don't disagree with this sort of legislation. Have to make all the fees transparent, before you commit to paying. None of this, what's called, I guess, cost shifting, where there might be major natural disasters somewhere, but you want to shift those costs to a different state. I think it's good to protect the consumers. Now, yeah, do you have the risk of some insurance companies deciding they don't want to do business in Illinois? I don't know, maybe. But I think all in all, if you look out for the consumer and you make things reasonable, anytime you have regulation, as long as it's reasonable, I think companies will be able to adjust, and I think it'll be good for everybody.
Bill, I think this is probably arguably a popular idea, but what about this possibly being government overreach?
Oh, are you talking to me now, Jim?
Yes, Bill, you're cracking the same question, basically.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. Well, you have to ask yourself, how come State Farm apparently started this by announcing they were going to have a 28% rate increase, which seems pretty egregious. But you have to ask yourself, if it, in a free market, if somebody tries to overprice their product, competitors are supposed to come in and be able to provide a better product at a lower price and end up taking a lot of market share from the guys who are overpricing. And so you have to ask, why would they think they could get away with that in Illinois? It's kind of I'm just asking that question. It's kind of a strange thing to think that you could pull in any free market environment. I think their intent is basically good, but I think they have to look at how did Illinois arrive in this situation in the first place, where one company felt like it had so much control that it could do something like that.
We continue our conversation with Bill Bloom and Kevin Perkins. Iowa state lawmakers could pass a tougher law that would raise the penalties for people convicted of animal torture in this state. House File 2348 and Senate File 2099 would make torturing an animal a Class D felony for a first offense. Right now, it's an aggravated misdemeanor. A conviction could carry up to 5 years in prison and a fine of more than $10,000. It would be a Class C felony for repeat offenders with a punishment of up to 10 years in prison. This passed the House unanimously in March. It stalled in the Senate after clearing committee. The biggest point of contention seems to come from state lawmakers who don't want this to apply to livestock, which it would not. Now, Iowa is the only state in the country where this isn't a felony on a first offense. Why isn't this a no-brainer, Bill Bloom?
Well, no, I think the way the legislation's written, I think both houses should pass it. It's focusing in on specifically on people who torture animals, and it's pretty graphic in some of the examples that they used. I can only speculate on why it hasn't been passed earlier, and I think maybe the legislation as presented was too vague, too broad. Maybe it got into things like livestock raising. I'm not sure, but this is specific to torture, doing horrible things to animals with the intention of inflicting pain, and yeah, I think both sides will pass it.
Well, it hasn't passed the Senate yet. Kevin, you see why this isn't? Any idea why this isn't a no-brainer so far?
I think it'll pass. I think it's a good thing to happen. One aspect, though, that they might want to consider is when you find someone guilty of torturing an animal, not only a fine and prison time, but you have to take a look at the core reasons why this person is doing this sort of thing. And so they should mandate some sort of mental health evaluations and also counseling maybe that will go along with that. I don't know if that's anything that they've even considered with this law, but I think that's one thing that you need to look at. Not only do you have to punish people that are doing this sort of thing, but you have to be able to get to the core of why and possibly prevent that from happening again.